Miss Jackie's Motivational Monday. Where do I start? I found me on the way to the cemetery. For years, over 20, everything I did was centered around autism, what Kendall needed, what we needed to speak up for, our routines of life. That was my world. I would eat, sleep, read, everything about autism. And so when Kendall was moved into an intensive autism behavior program, a lot of people probably really didn't understand what that meant. And she was there for almost 4 years. It was something I didn't want to talk about really because of the reputation of students that attended that program. However, that program, as much as we didn't want to be in that setting with her, taught me more than I could have ever have imagined. It taught me some things and I couldn't put words to them at that point. But it wasn't just about her learning. It was about what I learned during that time span and how it shaped who I was moving forward in life. And so when I made a decision to leave my career in education after almost 3 decades, the natural transition was, of course, I'm going to do autism consulting. I'm going to do autism training. I'm going to do autism talks because that's what I've been doing for almost 2 decades, almost 20 years, because Kendall's now 24. However, I kept feeling like after the first year, something was just not clicking for me like I thought it would. And then on 9/26/2025, my phone rang and it was my middle sister who was crying so hard. All I could do was ask her which one. And she said, Momma, she died in her sleep. My life changed just like that. Everything changed, but I couldn't put anything together because you go immediately into planning. Her service was a celebration of life because that's what we wanted to make sure. It was celebrating the woman that she was and everything she stood for. But when we were in that limousine headed to the cemetery, I found me. What do I mean? We weren't sad in that limo. It was my sisters and my aunts. We were talking and I said, I am clear right now after that ceremony. I'm supposed to pivot. I found me on the way to the cemetery. And so with that pivot, I knew I was supposed to move from autism being what was front and center for me and what I do. And so I just thought then I shouldn't talk about autism at all because it's not about that. That's what that pivot was about. You're moving away from autism. And now I'm trying to get people to understand autism is not my core topic. I'm out here doing different things. I have a story. I have my own life that I've lived. But then I realized that my life had really been hidden. It basically was like a shadow band behind Kendall's autism journey. And yes, you saw big wins, the big wins that required applause. But you didn't see the things that didn't require applause because I led in everything about me with autism. I lived in the shadow of her. Even though I had those big wins, I still lived in the shadow of being an autism mom and an autism advocate. And so in finding me, I knew I needed to pivot, but it was still trying to create my narrative. What does that mean? Finding me on the way to the cemetery, I still had places and still had to figure out what that meant for me. And so what I started to realize was where I was trying to run from leading with autism because I wanted people to understand I'm more than just an autism advocate. I have a story. I have so much to share that I want to lead other women and leaders to understand, I had to figure out, how do I make this work? And as I pulled back to take a look at me, what I realized was that the years that I hated the most about our journey not only taught her, but they taught me. They taught me the importance of three things: rhythm, role clarity, and recovery. I couldn't put words to it, but now I can. And so I now understand that it's not that I don't talk about autism. It's now more about what autism taught me. Those 4 years Kendall was in that autism unit taught me what now guides my life and has been guiding it for years. I just hadn't sat to think about it because I was so focused on Kendall's journey. I literally had to sit with a list of what occurred in her life from looking at the outline of my first book and my resume to see where I was, because I was so wrapped into her autism journey. I've had to literally tease out my life to see that you've been living by these rules from when Kendall spent that time in the autism unit. You've been living by the 5 rules your mom gave you, but I couldn't see it because I was so hidden behind Kendall's autism journey. I'm not hidden anymore. I now realize that I have hidden full aspects of me dealing with this MS. Moments of showing up and people had no clue I'd left a hospital or left a steroid treatment. People had no idea that I changed and did something that didn't make sense on paper. After being applauded for a huge award, I walked away from those leadership roles and didn't blow my life up. But you couldn't have known that because I was so hidden behind my daughter's autism journey. And so, in finding me on the way to the cemetery, I am still a speaker, but I realize now my story is what women and other leaders need to understand, that her autism, that behavior unit, it was teachable for her and it was teachable for me. And so right now, my story is based off of what she went through and what we went through, but it's also the fact of what I went through and how I was able to overcome. And so just know, I'm not sure what you may be hiding behind, and it wasn't intentional, but I need people to know I'm more than a caregiver. I'm more than just an autism advocate. I can see patterns I didn't even realize I noticed with things until I sat with my resume and the outline for my first book. I had to then do that to see myself and realize where I've had moments I didn't even celebrate. I finished a 3rd degree. I made a post online and I checked and moved forward. Same thing happened. I left education after almost 3 decades. And what did I do? Made a post and I checked and I moved forward because I felt like that was where I was supposed to stay, in that shadow behind her journey. But that's not the case anymore. And so I do these motivational Mondays because my mother taught me so much. But what her death, her passing taught me was that shadow band of who I am that was behind Kendall, to bring it to the forefront. Don't hide the resiliency that made me the woman that I am today. That woman right now has been happily married for almost 28 years. We have 2 amazing children that were born 14 months apart. Let me do the math. I was 7 months pregnant when Julian turned 1, and we've made it work.